right, I'm going to call to order the
I got like
Charter Review Commission.
they moved. Yeah, they moved into there for a little while. Yeah.
Hello. Roll call.
Barry?
Here.
Lunt?
Here.
Botcher? Here. Compost?
Here.
Chestnut? Bowen?
Here.
Goodison?
Here.
Henry? Hildreth?
Here.
Tattersall? Waller?
Here. We get an adoption of the agenda, please?
So moved.
And before we adopt the agenda, I'd like to point out that we have a supervisor of elections from Barton here and Will Boyette from the supervisor of elections office. And in respect of allowing them to get back to work since we are in election season, is there a way to move the item about in ranked choice voting and reduce to the top of the agenda so we can take care of that, discuss that, and move on to the business and then let them go back to work?
Sure. I'm a farmer.
Nope, that sounds
So
good.
we'll move it under,
I think Mr. Cummins has a question.
I've also noticed the general manager, GRU, is here, and she's, has responded to our charter review things. I'd like to give him a chance to address us and speak, and he's right here, so we can find out what his schedule is.
Sure.
That could work out. Okay.
So we have a motion on the adoption of the agenda with the change by Ms. Foster.
And Mr. Campos?
I have another agenda question. You've seen I've handed out a proposed bit of language, and I want to know if I should present that somewhere in our discussion or just wait till member comment.
I believe that's under Work Plan Article 1,
Okay.
190102. That's already on the agenda.
All right. Thank you.
So is that also, I'm sorry, I wasn't here last meeting, and I noticed in the minutes, which we're going to get to in a minute, we brought up we skipped over the Equal Opportunity Office for member comment. And I know you addressed it last meeting, but I don't see in the minutes where.
We weren't sure why it was on there. Nobody, so we just didn't address it.
Okay, is that something that we need to add to the agenda, or is that, or did you vote to move on?
We just moved on, yes. We didn't vote, we had a comment regarding it.
Should someone have come from that office to inform us about
I think it was in light, if I memory serves it correctly without rehashing it, it was in light that we were evaluating each individual charter officer and the necessity of remaining a charter officer or consolidating under another charter officer. When we got to that charter officer, that's when I took push the pause button and go, before we comment on that, we may want to have other folks that had opinion bring forth. So if they were at the last meeting and didn't bring anything forward, then
Correct.
I'm okay with it, but that was the whole reason for bringing it up.
Right. No, nobody had any. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we have a motion with Susan's recommendation to move up.
The item 2.04 is for ranked choice voting, and the item 3.06 with the with the utility.
Right, but I think we can handle that when we get to the charter officer analysis.
Maybe so.
But that's all in the analysis. Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second? You did the
Yeah, or I think we made a motion at the same time, so I'll second with the changes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is the approval of minutes, 190868.
Make your presence known
Second.
so that you get recorded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so business discussion items. So if in the deck, if you would like, come up to address. In your staff analysis, it is addressed regarding IRB. So it clearly states it doesn't currently comply with statute and constitutional provisions that govern elections in our state, claiming it's not a workable solution, and it would create, the city would be required to procure its own equipment and create a fiscal impact, and we would be holding separate elections on the same day, which would be inefficient and confusing to voters. So, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Commissioners, Madam Chair. I know we're here to discuss ranked choice voting, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about it. I think you had a presentation as well. But as you may be aware, currently there is no software that has been state certified. And it requires me to run elections according to state law. And so what I wanted to say to you, I know there's been a lot of work in trying to get the city's election on the fall ballot and with the county elections. And so, we're in a good place with that. But if you all move forward, and I can't tell you what you all can do or don't do. I just know I wouldn't be able to run the election because the software is not state certified. So I would have to, for the county election, I wouldn't be able to conduct the city's election because of the ranked choice voting. So that's pretty much, there's a lot of things that go along with it. And I have with me Will Boyette, who's the chief deputy in my office and also oversees the voting system. So he can get even more detail, if you need some more details. But we wouldn't be able to conduct your elections, the City of Gainesville election in 2022, if you all move forward with ranked choice voting, because there's no software that's certified.
I have a question. Thank you, Ms. Barton. So I, in previous conversations that I had with TJ Cachet, just over the phone, and I realized that this is more Will's kind of bailiwick, not TJ's.
Yes.
That I was left with the impression that if we didn't have these state kind of obstacles ahead of us, that if we wanted to do a ranked choice voting election in the city, that we have the hardware and the software. It's just that the software is not state certified? Or is it that we don't have the proper software?
Will Boyette, Chief Deputy. The hardware that the county has purchased for running the state and county elections is a hardware model from a vendor that is capable of performing ranked choice voting, but it requires a different version of the firmware and software to do that, which is not available to us to purchase under state certification. So identical hardware could do ranked choice voting, but it would have to have a completely different loadout of software, which at the present time we cannot legally install on the equipment in our possession.
Okay, just to make sure that I understand this, because I'm trying to get like the global view of it for the whole state of Florida, that there is software out there that will do it. It's just the state has not given the green light to any of the supervisors of election to purchase that software and conduct elections in that manner, at least on the city level, correct? I'm splitting this, I understand, but I just want to get my head wrapped around this properly.
Sort of, yes. There is a section in statute that establishes minimum standards for voting systems and then delegates to the Division of Elections obligation to make administrative rules to implement those standards. And those presently require, single choice voting for systems to even submit for certification. So that underlying statute and administrative rule would have to be revised for them to even be able to consider certifying a ranked choice system.
And so basically, the movement would need to be at the state legislature level to get them to certify ranked choice voting software.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Mr. Bennett has a question.
Good to know.
So, if a charter allowed it, but did not require a particular time of implementation, then whenever the state does make that move, it would be possible to implement then. Does that sound correct?
Right, but I mean, Sarasota's had it since 2007, and we're in 2020. So, I mean, 13 years later.
Well, is anybody in the legislature working on it, or is anybody working on the legislature to try to get it?
Yeah, there is a statewide organization, Ranked Choice, or Rank My Vote Florida, that wants to do that. And what they're looking at is all the different municipalities that would be interested in doing it. And this would also affect county elections too. That if a movement can be created and enough critical mass on the local level, where municipalities and even counties are saying, we want this, then either through a citizen-led initiative petition process or lobbying the state legislature to say, the citizens want this, can you please change the state statute? Obviously, this is a long-range plan, but I think if, my understanding really your question, Holly, is if we go ahead and do what Sarasota did, and that is put it in our charter anyway, so that if at whatever point in the future, the state legislature changes that statute that prohibits it to allowing it,
And join that critical mass.
we're ready to rock and roll right away. So that's kind of the question.
I had the same question, and would that create an undue burden on the supervisor if we did something similar to Sarasota and we get ready? Because it's another 10 years before we are going to revisit this charter, but maybe in between that time, the state might.
Yeah, so Will Boyette, Chief Deputy Supervisor of Elections again. Speaking purely from the perspective of elections administration, I would obviously suggest you speak with your legal counsel for other perspectives, but so long as we did not end up in a situation where we had municipalities and the county level trying to implement different formulations for the same election, we would have, administering one is not more difficult for us than administering the other. It's unlikely with the way things stand now that a system that could do both on one ballot would exist. So we would need to have it be, a county level change to apply to the county level election, but administering it would not be an undue burden.
So just so we understand that means the county and the city both would need to do ranked choice voting?
Correct.
Together. Okay, just to clarify.
And that it's not an undue administrative burden.
Burden.
Mr. Campos?
Missing something, this is our current
Charter.
charter prohibit us from doing.
I'm just looking at that
ranked choice
too.
voting.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any provisions in there other than what state law allows. And if state law changes, there's no need to put it in the charter.
I've been looking at the language, if I may, because I'm looking at the same thing. This section 2.04 sub 2, line 3, if a candidate does not receive a majority of the votes cast, there's a runoff election. And I think that may be the provision that we're talking, maybe.
That describes single choice voting.
No.
That procedure describes single choice voting.
Well, it's a separate.
Well,
it's a
I did
runoff
not see the
election.
presentation, so I'll preface it, but isn't ranked choice voting, doesn't a majority and ranked choice voting win at the end?
Yes.
So,
It creates
I don't, again, I don't get it.
It's
Why
a
that
run.
we need it
It's
from
a
the
built-in
legal
runoff.
It's an automatic.
It's a built-in runoff.
Instant.
It's a built-in runoff. It's not-
Instant runoff.
I have a question
I think-
for Mr. Conlon. Let's say the county and the city got on the same page. We're on the November ballot. But we also have on the November ballot elections beyond the city, the district elections like the state legislature. That would not be in ranked choice, but the city and county would be. Is that a possible scenario, or that doesn't work? Same ballot.
So that's the sort of detail that would have to be worked out with the group lobbying the state legislature for how to implement and certify the change. You know, from what I know of the system, for the state to certify a ranked choice software installation would pretty much necessitate the state choosing to change their system to that. Now, it's possible there could be developments between now and the indefinite date in the future when we got there that would let them run in parallel, but obviously I can't speak to not yet developed options.
Okay, that answers my question. Basically, it's the city, the county, and the state that have to come in. I got it. Okay, makes sense.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. I guess for me, I understand the concept and I understand what they presented concerning if we had the ranked choice voting, it would possibly save us money and not having to go through the runoff and all of that. But at the same time, to me, there are some items that I feel that we should leave to the city commission to decide and not have them come from this body. The city commission can decide anytime the state so chooses to go to ranked choice voting that they can create an ordinance to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to come through the Charter Review Commission. And to me, there are items that are more pressing than this, because even if we vote to move it to the city commission and have it on the ballot, if the state hasn't approved it, it's going to sit there in our charter for however long the state decides to pass this legislation. And we are coming on precious time that we need to begin to formulate the legislation that we're going to forward to the city commission to add to the charter or take away. And ranked choice voting, it's a good thing. It can help in the future, but I just feel it's kind of getting off track a little bit, and that we need to consider the items before us and prepare for the public hearings, and that's what I feel we need to do.
Well, I think that when we get to the charter officer analysis, we can look at some of those things, and I agree with you totally. So,
And I agree, Sherwin, about, that the city commission can do a whole lot of things by ordinance. I think the flying the ointment for us on this is what they mentioned, what Kim Barton mentioned, and that is in 2022, we are going to be moving city elections to correspond with the county elections. And so what we're talking about is then pulling that back apart, even though we just went through all the process to get that happening. I don't see how we tease that apart in any kind of a rational, effective manner. And as much as it breaks my heart, I think we need to perhaps pull this one from our list and move on.
Let's get to the charter officer analysis, and we can go through one by one. Everybody's read it, and I think that'll relieve a lot of this back and forth. Okay.
Do we need any official vote?
No, we're going to wait till we get to the charter officer analysis. So right now, we're on 1090102, Work Plan Article 1. This deals with Mr. Blount's desire to include some type of statement. And if you want to present, Mr. Blount, I suggested that we have a preamble. That's where the model charter has that type of language in there. But I see that you've come up with something, so if you'd like to present, Mr. Blount?
Yes, the way I've written it would fit into the list of powers of the mayor and city commission, but, I'm open to the idea of a preamble as well. And I do want to, you can all read, I'm not reading to you, I want to read it into the record.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, there are more copies available here if anybody in the audience.
I think it'd be better if you read it, Mr. Blount.
Okay. The mayor and city commission have the prerogative and the obligation to examine all existing governmental and managerial policies of all city departments for elements of racial and economic bias in their design or delivery, and they must identify and act to ameliorate the effects and patterns imposed by said biases. The mayor and commission will subject all future policy formation to tests for similar bias. Elected policymakers shall utilize staff and citizens to apply, evaluate such tests for bias so that the mayor and commission will restructure policy proposals accordingly. And some of the thinking behind this, we've just celebrated sesquicentennial. My question, in achieving sesquicentennial, will Gainesville also achieve a sea change in culture? Will we recognize that all ethnicities and cultures have been full partners in the authorship of human society? Well, we're seeing some glimmers of hope. The City Commission moved to endorse the principles of the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, and that's something I asked this body to read when we started. However, where is real action from those GARE words? A wise man once said, "A difference which makes no difference is not a difference." That was Mr. Spock, by the way. The county is involved in calling for a truth and reconciliation process, but that's been kicking around the county in words for 2 years without seeming to get traction. Something may be starting now, and at the end of the meeting I'll announce an event this Friday. The CRA launched a Black Heritage Trail, but if you talk to people in the Fifth Avenue neighborhood, it's become a Black Heritage Trail of tears, with the stealing of personal narratives by an alien contractor who was called in to bypass ingenious local talent that was already deeply researching the material. That, combined with gentrification, has that neighborhood feeling that way. And the school board has started a full panel of Black history courses in every high school this year. But there are such huge gaps in their presentation, it's almost as bad as not having it at all. And it seems to leave Black history subservient to white history and fails to unify them as one human history. Plus, it's isolated to one subject area. So we have starts, and they're stumbling already. I think we need to modify the foundations to build a better structure. That's why I'm trying to get this in the charter. We want a community that can leave the list of most segregated places. And if we can ignite a light at 150, possibly it can lead this nation as it's moving toward 250. The Supreme Court once spoke of the duty of all levels of government to eradicate, quote, the badges and emblems of slavery, end quote. Those are big challenges, to recognize them. And, you know, so long after slavery, people are going to say, oh, they're always talking about slavery. This is new stuff. This is not, this legacy goes way back. So the challenge is to recognize them and to take action. I hope those are challenges we can get prepared for. And that's my whole thing. Thank you.
And you were suggesting that this go under one, like the last thing under section?
Yeah, I think there's 22 items there.
Right.
This could be a number of 23. But if you think there's a better way to incorporate it as in a preamble, I'm okay. I'd like to hear that idea.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
2 questions I have. Number one, you talk about test. So what will be the test? That's number one. You're saying test, but exactly what is going to be the test?
That would depend, that would be specific to every policy idea. You have to look at what area it affects.
No. You say test. I understand what you're beginning to say, but that's not answering my question. You're saying all future policy formation to test for similar bias. So what are the particular tests that you are going to use to recognize the similar bias? To me, if you're talking about putting this language in the charter, the language should be clearly understood what you are driving at to achieve the goal you're wanting to achieve with this preamble. And just saying generically test, to me, that's not real clear. The second thing is the city commission has their diversity and equity initiative. Are we not moving ahead of them with this? Would you not think that this would actually be better to be a part of that initiative instead of putting it in the charter? So those are my two questions.
To the second one first, I believe this is a way, and that there should be a way to align the charter with that work. We don't have to wait on them. And
no, it's not a matter of waiting, it's working with them.
yeah, this is.
Because see, the problem that I have, let me just say this. The problem that I have, it's like we are attempting to tell the city commission what they should be doing. And quite frankly, I don't think that's what our role is per se. And we are essentially trying to dictate them certain things that they are supposed to be doing when they are the governing body. And what we are supposed to be doing is sending recommendations, advising them as to what we think will make government run better, in my opinion. And some things that we have talked about, it is like we're taking the power of the city commission to tell the city commission what they should be doing. And I don't think that's really our purpose.
With this language, you mean?
With the language and some other things like the ranked choice voting. I mean, to me, some things we've just been considering is not, in my opinion, in line with what this commission should be doing. And again, if you are going to submit this, it should be submitted with all clarity as to how we're going to reach the goals of the bias that you're talking about. And just saying generically test does not clarify that path, and that's what I'm saying. And whereas the city does have a full-fledged diversity and equity initiative, to me, this will be well served working with and sharing this with them to see how it can be incorporated and that they can utilize this to reach the goal that they're trying to reach in the areas of diversity and equity. And that's all I'm just suggesting to you. That's all.
Okay, shall I respond? Well, I started responding to number 2, that I believe the charter should align with that work. And as far as powers of the commission has no powers that don't derive from the vote of the people and from this document. This document governs, the commission serves.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. But they also make the decision in the position that they're in as well.
With guidelines from the charter.
Yeah.
Right, so that's why I'm looking for this guideline in the charter. So that it can't be put in by one commission and taken out by the next.
Well, that depends, because it's looked at every 10 years.
No, I mean,
it can be taken out.
I'm talking about the initiatives you're talking about, the equity initiatives you're talking about. The current commission can favor those, vote them up, act on them, and another commission 3 years down the road can throw them right out.
Mr. Campos?
Carly, I commend you in your quests for these efforts. I see what former Commissioner Henry brought up. And I think what Chair Henry, stated earlier about a declaratory statement might be the most prudent here, more so than trying to make it a specific guideline in the charter. I think, yes, this charter is the foundation that the people give to the commission to operate in. And I think the intentions of the people are stated in the charter, voted on. Getting into the weeds as to how that analyzation is done or how that test is done and all of that, I think is for the commission to direct staff to come up with the most appropriate.
That's why I didn't specify.
Well, I know, but you allude to it in the statement. I think that's what.
Well, I allude to who should come up with it, the elected commissioners, with the help of staff like the Equal Opportunity Office and citizens such as the Human Rights Board. So I talk about who can create the test, not, I don't want to create the test.
Well, and I would just make an example of just picking a random thing in here. Make reasonable rules and regulations for promoting the purity of water supply, for protecting it from pollution, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't get into the weeds as to how that's accomplished. It's just that that's a goal of the commission. So the statement of the goal to eliminate bias can be put in a declaratory statement without saying you will test, you will this. The goal is to eliminate it, either it would be by test or by procedure or by any of the other things that you have listed in here. I think we accomplished the same thing by making that a declaratory goal versus a hard and fast rule that this, and I think the way it's worded, it kind of pushes in that direction, and I think that's why Mr. Henry is bringing up what he's bringing up. Because we don't yet know what each one of those are. Like you said, it depends on what area. If you're talking about housing, the testing is one way. If you're talking about enforcement of rules and ordinances that the police would get involved in, that would be something different. Each one of those assessments would be different.
Yeah.
So I think a declaratory guidance, like we saw in the preamble that we saw in the model charter from the League of Cities, what he has in here can be encapsulated.
In the earlier draft of this, in a few places, I had shalls and shoulds and may, and I suddenly remembered the 1994 state law for Black history that ends with words like should and encouraged, and it's been 25 years unenforced. So laws cannot talk about hope for things and encourage things. They tell you what to do. Period.
I would just say I support inclusion of this, whether in a preamble or whether in 22. I don't feel like we're telling the city commission what to do. This is still a recommendation to them at the end of the day. But I think it is important that if we want to make recommendations for how government should work better, recognizing bias and trying to eliminate bias should certainly be one way we can make government work better.
You have a hand up.
Kyle, I also want to commend you for this. I'm really excited about these concepts of racial equity toolkits, and there's very few policies you can put in a local level that really help move all of these things forward. And yeah, this is just one that's extremely exciting, and I'm really happy you put it forward. I guess two things when I see how these things are generally implemented, like in Seattle or in Milwaukee or in some of the places where they've rolled these out, there's kind of two, for one, you focus a lot on bias as the bar that you shoot for, which is that they are going to be checking each one of these for bias. And what I've seen mostly for these toolkits is it's less bias and more on consequences, whether unintended or intended, on historically underrepresented communities, for the reason that much of the Jim Crow laws, federal policy, did not have explicit bias in it, right? It was, they were written, you could see them on the face as saying, this has nothing to do with oppression or anything like that, when of course that was how the effects were written in, with very specific things in mind. So putting it up to the bar where you have to prove bias in order to show something is, I think, it's a high bar in order to shoot for. And then two, when you start rolling these out, it's the question is which policies do you subject them to? So usually I've seen in Seattle they started with budget questions and then planning questions, rezoning, started to pick stuff up as things went along. When we say all future policy formations to test of similar bias, policy is what the city makes determinations on every day. And so at some point, there has to be sort of a bar as to what we rise that up to, and maybe that is put toward the city commission as to what that determination is. But if this is viewed, conservatively, where every single thing that moves forward would need to be going through this very specific review as they outline in GARE, I could see that being a difficult bar to try to shoot for.
Mr. Kelly?
Okay. I echo what Crystal's saying, that to make a statement in our charter that we have a certain value has a lot of value. It's not a policy, but it's a statement of values, and the preambles do that. Yet I do have trouble with some of this wording, and I realize, Kali, it's just a proposal. So I like the concept. Ryan brought up a critical point. There's explicit bias and implicit bias. And any of you who have taken the implicit bias test and tell me you passed it without bias, then I don't believe you took the test. Because I never met anyone who has ever done that yet. We all have, I was at a lecture recently on implicit bias at a law school by a federal judge who talked about how shocked he was when he took the test and how it changed his approach to a lot of things. GPD has worked very actively to deal with issues of bias. It's tough. It's tough. I have trouble, though, because there is implicit, explicit bias and all, with the particular wording here. As Brian pointed out, there is, we certainly want to say something about our values, yet I'm afraid that this could take us down roads that may not accomplish what we want the city. That values diversity and equity, but could take us down the road of hunting for biases, which are always there. And so I applaud what's going on. I'm worried about how we're getting there.
Well, bias in a policy simply means you have a policy proposal, and you examine whatever area of public services or conditions it addresses, and determine whether it highly advantages people of one particular identity or location compared to people of another identity or location, and try to even out where the policy is uneven in its application.
Bothers you that way with the city? Yes, I can understand that.
Probably better in work I've actually been in, because I haven't administered a city, but I have been involved in public housing. I remember one time at the Housing Authority arguing whether to install air conditioning in the units. And one person, the director of GHA at that time, and this was a previous director, said, that's just a luxury. We can't give these people stuff like that. That's just giving away luxuries. And another person said, well, it keeps people healthier. It keeps the unit better because we're not battling the damage of humidity and mold and stuff like that. And what they weren't facing up to was federal guidelines. Weatherization programs in the South consider AC a standard item, whereas in the North, they are considered a luxury. And it's all by location, by where they were in the country. So that policy decision was about to disadvantage our residents based on judgments related to another place entirely.
Okay.
Although it's a slippery slope here, without having
Oh,
everything
that's
written.
pretty, you decorated.
Well, some alternative language which may at least begin moving us in the direction that Mr. Blunt is trying to get us to move. The mayor and city commission shall examine the governmental and managerial policies of all city departments for racial and economic bias in the design or delivery of services, period. The goal is to ameliorate the effects and patterns imposed by racial bias that have resulted, and I haven't finished, historically, in the blah, blah, blah. And then just end with two simple sentences that I think deliver, at least begin to deliver the message. It doesn't mandate, it doesn't direct the litmus test that is yet to be developed before services can be, to examine the services that we are delivering.
Well, again, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, Colin, but I just don't think it fits in the charter. This is the first time I'm seeing this language, and what I had was a more comprehensive declaratory preamble that would cover it as a whole. I think this is, there's all kinds of, there's gender bias, there's, not just racial bias.
Yeah, economic.
There's all kinds of whether, so if you have a preamble that, discusses that you want diversity and inclusiveness, comprehensive representation, the things that were in this model charter that includes these languages to have,
Yeah, I did miss gender, I should have.
There's all kinds. So I just do not think at this point that this is in the form that belongs in the charter. Mr. Campos.
There are several positions that our commission has taken on a lot of issues dealing with this as well. And just as a quick example, and I don't want to convolute the issue because I do agree with making a proclamation as to what the values of our town are in the charter. But I'm looking at a proclamation that the city commission put together a few months ago, it was regards to how the city feels about being a welcoming city and how its departments would handle immigration issues and the like. And this is going to come up at a commission meeting this week. But all the whereases in here is the position of the city. Gainesville is known as a city that welcomes newcomers from many parts of the world and recognizes there are many contributions to the cultural, social, economic life of the community and its broad hopes for general prosperity. And Gainesville residents are committed to repudiate racial and ethnic bigotry and discrimination whenever it has arisen. And in furtherance of this community commitment, the city commission adopted a resolution, blah, blah, blah. I won't belabor it. But in those very few statements, addresses some of the issues that we're talking about here. And I know, Colin, you want to go a little bit deeper than that. But again, I think the preamble stating these things that our commission has already enacted and put in the commission, I think is where we should go with this, to be inclusive of some of what Kali wants added in there, but they're more of a global statement. And I understand what you're saying. There's history where they make a global statement and nobody follows up with it. But I don't think the charter is going to hold anyone accountable to that. And if you have commissioners that aren't going to follow the charter, you vote them out. So I maybe more stronger ordinances down the road or internal policies along those lines is to accomplish some of this. But again, I'm going to stick with the preamble suggestion.
Okay. And I think we move.
Yeah, is there an alternate language for a preamble?
Well, I provided it to Marie that's sent out to everybody. I mean, it's pretty standard form language, I can put it together. I mean, it's in the model city charter, and it pretty much covers everything, diversity, inclusiveness, our values of a representative democracy, home rule, all of these things that are kind of central to the core of the city's mission.
Do we, Mr. Eastman, you had referenced Seattle and some other cities. Are there other cities that have language that specifically address equity and bias that?
I couldn't find anything, any charter amendments. There's many cities that passed, I think this is off the racial equity toolkit concept, right? You're using tests, which Madison was the first one to really start rolling it out in Seattle, made very, very sweeping reforms in that regard. And I don't know off the top of my head. It's been a few years since I've researched this particular policy.
And they have goals, objectives, performance indicators, and ways to assess whether they've been reached or not. To my knowledge, we don't have such a thing as that. I could be stand corrected.
But again, it doesn't belong in the charter.
Well, I don't disagree there.
No, but the point is, the city does have their diversity and equity initiative, which theoretically and hopefully will involve the goals and so forth that you're mentioning. And to me, having the preamble and with the city having their diversity and equity initiative, what they're saying is, we're going to change the culture. We're admitting the culture has been biased racially, it has been biased economically, it has been biased by gender. That's why this initiative has been implemented. So, to me, the city is aware of the need to do exactly not only what they're doing, but what we're talking about here. Now, and going back to the citizen part, it's up to the citizens to hold them accountable to this initiative, if it's that important to us.
Kali, are you amenable to having this in the preamble and not
Yes.
within the?
Yeah.
But I think the whole language has to be more reflective of what the preamble should be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, I agree.
I'll work on the preamble. All right, let's move along.
Well,
Um,
Madam Chair, just to have it in the record, and the motion may die, but I still want it in the record, so I move to accept this language or a form of it for a charter,
Preamble.
for a charter proposal for the ballot, and it can die for no second or be voted down.
I'll
whatever.
second it with the proviso that it's a form of this language, not necessarily.
A form of,
Yeah.
the language. I'll second it on that basis, yes.
all in-
So, clarification, are you asking it just to be a part of the charter in any form, or are you asking for a specific form?
Preamble.
Well, I'm hoping for something that causes the city to examine existing policies and check all future policies for the possibility of racial, economic, and now gender bias. Sorry.
But I think, to answer your question, at least what I seconded, I think is something called preamble, which we don't have now, and that I think you're going to develop based on the model city charter. No, is that correct? I don't want to...
I can, sure.
Well, what did you have in mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I had in mind. That's why I sent out that would be, it had the language, it had everything, and this does not represent that.
Well, what he made a motion on, and what you seconded, you said a form thereof, but you didn't, I think your intention was for it to be in the preamble.
Well, yes.
In a different format,
Yeah,
worded format.
and probably different words that are not...
And if he agrees to that,
Yeah.
then okay. If he doesn't
Yeah.
agree to that,
We can
I
make the modification.
I agree to that.
I think we need to vote on this separate, and then if I want to bring a preamble back at our next meeting, I can bring a preamble back, but I think this needs to be voted on as is or some
You said you had
form
sent out something by email. I didn't see it, but
Yep.
a preamble that you wrote up?
I sent out the copy of the pages of the preamble of the model.
Oh, from the
model
model.
We-
From the
Yeah,
model.
that we have that.
We all have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
Okay.
not well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I thought that would help you create the
Buses coming down the
language.
road here, watch out.
So I think we need to vote on this specifically right now. Because this is separate. He wants this in the charter under
well, that's what I was trying to
number
clarify.
23,
He
and
made
this,
a motion to put it in the charter.
yes.
And he seconded it, saying, as long as you agree to a variation of what you wrote here, and I think your intention was it for it to be in the preamble.
A preamble
Yeah.
yet to be developed.
You have to be developed.
I think in my
And I
motion
think
I
that's
said
the-
some form of this.
Some form of it.
And that's what,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I emphasized that.
Okay, and so that's what we're voting on, I think.
I think so. Some form of this to be in the preamble. I would say that the model city charter preamble language is good, but it doesn't go it's not as strong as this. So some merging of the
final
two
wording
would be yet
voted
to
on
be,
down the road when the preamble is amended or
yeah.
Developed.
That we-
edited or developed.
Yeah,
no city would accept this as a preamble. This is what, you need wordsmithing on this.
Yeah.
Just
Do we
to
feel like
clarify
we-
what we're voting on is to take the wording of this, do some wordsmithing for a preamble. Is that your intention?
Spirit and sentiment.
Is that the spirit of the spirit of your
That's
motion?
what I'm accepting.
Was to do a preamble, but then the preamble comes back to us and we have to vote on that anyway.
Yeah.
I think so.
You have a hand on it.
I'll just point, I mean, reading I think it's a great idea to have a preamble, but I would hate to say that we're going to pass a preamble simply as a way to sort of not have the discussion on this point. Like, I mean, I think we need to have a discussion about the preamble.
Yeah.
We clearly need to have a discussion about, but like, we need to decide if we want a preamble, which sounds great.
That's what I can remember,
But-
is we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. and
Yeah.
Right, but our
Something to
current
say.
charter does not, and that was my suggestion, based on the model city charter, to include a preamble that is more overarching and not so specific. Right, so,
Call the question.
call the question. All in favor?
I guess so.
Any opposed? Did you vote?
No, because I'm trying to understand, what are you trying to achieve? Because the thing is, okay, if we're going to do a preamble, just choose parts of this, compose a preamble, bring it back, and we discuss it.
That's
I mean,
what we're
why do
talking
we
about.
have
That's
to
what
go
we're talking,
through?
that's what we're
I
talking
think,
about.
I think
That's
over
Yeah, but why are we going through, okay.
Because we're a
To state
deliberative
that this
body.
is what we want
Well,
to do.
no, that's not the point, that's not the point.
Mr. Blount?
I believe what we're voting,
Yes.
or just voted, was that the ideas expressed here should appear in the charter, and it looks like preferred in a preamble. I'm just concerned that we don't just throw this out, skip these ideas, that we have that something in the charter proposals we put forth triggers our elected officials to critically examine existing and future policies for these historical
But
issues.
that doesn't belong in a preamble.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, that won't come out of the preamble. It's sort of like the preamble to the Constitution doesn't have any legal weight to it. I mean, if it essentially makes it that
A
there'll be
preamble
a
sets an
preamble.
ideal is
Yeah.
what it does. It
Right.
sets an ideal,
Yeah.
and that's what a preamble does.
Right.
Right, but I think, and this is what I was trying to relate earlier, is you set it up, but then it's up to the commission to put policies in place to do what you're asking to be done.
And again, which is what the diversity and equity initiative,
So it sounds like it's already done, we're just pointing to it.
yeah.
The horse is probably as dead as it's going to get, but right now, as we sat here, there is no preamble. It
Right.
starts off Article 1, establishment.
Right.
Yeah.
What the chair is proposing, I think, is a preamble that precedes this and says
Right.
I
preamble.
think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with that, and I understood that, but then when it was moved to add this language, and to me, I'm in agreement with the preamble, but in composing the preamble, what you're actually wanting to do is possibly incorporate some language from this into the
I'm
preamble,
not,
correct?
no, I'm not trying to say that this exact language has to be in
No,
the
no, you didn't
preamble.
hear me. I said incorporate some of the language from this into the preamble. And that's what you're
Well,
trying to achieve, right?
Possibly, we'll see what the chair writes up.
Okay.
Get some elements of this into the preamble.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
what we're talking
I'll work on it.
Yeah, but it wasn't clarified like that, though.
I expect to see the words racial and economic and gender bias in here somewhere.
So did that decide your vote, Mr. Henry?
All right, let's move on.
What's that?
Did that
All right,
decide
so
your
now
vote?
we have the
We were trying to get to your vote.
190890 Charter Officer Analysis sheet. So everybody received it. And going through, the first one was the city commission shall define resident and residency. There was a legal note that the city commission already has the authority to do this by ordinance, and that it would not prevent or resolve residency challenges. So So again, while the idea is important and good and we have a history of it, but if it's not going to make a difference, this is something we want to put forward.
And I was going to brought this up,
Yeah.
I didn't think the person brought it up. So I think what we did is we basically kind of threw in the city commission's lap anyway to define that. And so if we're going to do that, then maybe we should, and I'm doing this all in the context of, we have proposed 11 different things. And I don't know if we really want 11 different things, charter amendments on the ballot. This is something that can be dealt with by the city commission, by ordinance, then let's go ahead and have that done. And as far as any legal challenges, as we go through the ordinance process, I suppose we can kind of cross that bridge.
Yeah, I would say this does not need to be addressed in the charter, given the charter.
Well, I think if you do by ordinance, though, unless your citizens show up to the meeting and voice their opinion, you have 7 people that are making that choice on what the residency requirements would be for that office.
Right.
And so I think putting it on the charter review for a vote of the general populace gives the opportunity for the voting populace to vote one way or the other of what the residency requirements could be.
But we're just saying that the city commission shall define residents and residents, so it's the same 7 people.
And they already do
That's
that.
right.
They already
So
do
that's
that.
the legal argument, is that they already have that right, and they already will do
Right,
that.
sorry. I thought we got into the weeds as to
Yeah,
what
we
they
did.
were, and I forgot.
Yeah, we did.
Do you want a motion to not include this in the?
I think we had talked about making recommendations versus moving actual charter amendments forward, so should we put this in the category of recommend the commission?
I just think we should not.
No, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I see what you're saying, right,
We had
right.
talked about
Yeah.
Well-
moving some things forward, but then also having a separate set of recommendations for things that are not going to be charter amendments, but we think that the city
Right.
commission should.
Right.
Right, why
Right.
the basis, like Mr. Henry brought up, like the basis for some of our thoughts on some of these things. So yes, that can be included in a white paper, so.
Right, right.
So do we have a motion to not put this forward?
I was going to, do you want it not part of the work plan, as I had in my own mind, just that this not be part of the work plan? Or removed from the work plan?
Removed from the work
Correct.
plan.
Okay, I'll move that we remove this item from the work plan.
I'm assuming we have to officially then say that we're going to have 2 categories. One that's going to be part of the work plan for recommended amendments to go on a ballot, and then another set of recommendations
Yeah.
for the city commission to take upon themselves to do for the ordinance.
Yeah. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we will remove one. Number 1 is removed. Next one was the eligibility to move the term limit from 2 consecutive terms to 3. There was no analysis, so that seems to be okay, as long as it's still okay with everybody else.
My objections from the first time I voted on it, still on the record.
If you objected, they are.
But we have not yet realized the extended terms that were voted in recently, and now we're recommending to extend it yet again. And that was why I voted again.
You know, we also have a citizen that emailed us and presented the same thing as well. I don't know if you all remember the email.
Sure, I have it in my archives.
Well, I know that there were some of us that were for no term limit.
Yes.
This was kind of our compromise, so. Okay, amend 2.04 election and terms. It's a constant runoff voting issue, so again, I do not think this is a top contender, given, the current statute and constitutional provisions, and even the presentation by the supervisor of elections.
Chair. I asked the attorney, our original question that we brought up, the current language in there, if this was approved by the state legislature, would our current charter have to be amended to allow for this, or is the current language that's in there right now allow the city to move to this type of voting without a change in the charter? With the majority voting comments.
Talking about ranked choice.
Right.
Ranked choice.
Will ranked choice be able to be implemented without an amendment to the charter under the current language that it has about a runoff?
Assuming the
It's the
state
very
laws.
discussion that you had earlier. I mean, your charter says that the candidate with the majority of votes shall be elected, and it talks about if the candidate does not receive the majority of votes, then a runoff election shall be held between the two candidates for that seat receiving the highest number of votes cast.
Yeah, that blocks ranked choice.
I don't think you can, twist that into this runoff model.
Yeah,
It says what it says. If you're going to have a general election, the top two go on to a runoff.
yeah, that's single choice voting.
So just to go back a second though, was there a decision on whether 2.03 term limits is going to go forward to the, go forward or not?
Do we need to vote on these
Yes.
individually? I think, or we probably should.
So absent,
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to number 2, amend 2.03 eligibility. Motion to move it forward.
So I vote we move forward on that 2.03 eligibility.
But that's
going
defining
to 2
residency.
consecutive terms.
No.
Oh.
This is the term limit.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's,
we're
Okay.
backtracking.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay,
Nay.
for the record.
For the record. All right, so back on.
Can I comment on that for Mr. Campos' benefit? So now, if it goes forward, the voters take it, we have 10 years to see what the difference makes. We have the county with no limits, and people on there 18, 19, 20 years. And we'll see how it goes with city commissioners having a little longer in office. There's an argument about having term limits, and especially short-term limits, empowers the administrative bureaucracy, because they know that the elected people will be gone soon.
And we have
So,
to make this argument to the voters anyway.
yeah. So, we'll see if things change locally with commissioners serving a little longer. And in 10 years, they may decide to go to no limits.
Okay, so
And you had a
back on
hand
the
over here.
Instant runoff voting, I mean, I don't think it needs to be here. I
I was
don't-
going to say, I don't want to take up too much more time, because we're already after 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
But I'll just reiterate for the record, since we're going to vote on this, that as much as I would love to see instant runoff voting for city, county, state elections, I think because of 2 things. Number one, the obstacles stated by the supervisor of elections, and the fact that in 2022, we're going to be putting the city elections on the county elections in August, that to tease them apart would create a whole other host of problems, logistical problems, financial, fiscal problems, that thinking about if we were to put this on the ballot, trying to explain all of that and convince voters that this is something to move forward on would be a very, very hard sell, and I don't think we should waste their time on this.
Well, question. Say the state does authorize this in 2025. So then what happens? Will their power override our charter that tells us to do single choice, or?
depends on how
They just would allow
They
it.
would certify the
Yeah.
software.
So then it would, so
Because they haven't done any.
so at that point, it would require a charter change to make it happen.
And my understanding, so I guess I have a question for the city attorney, that if that were to happen, and let's say that happened today, the city could go ahead and do it. We're not prohibited from doing it based upon how our charter or any ordinance reads at this time.
He's saying we are. Our charter says if someone does not win majority, then you have a runoff.
Yeah, you got a
It
runoff
references
election.
statute, I thought. That was the sticking point, is that it references statute.
I don't think it does.
Oh, okay.
No, it doesn't.
Well, let's put it this way. We can cross that bridge when we get to it. If the state does that, and right now there's no indication they will, so it's not imminent. They're not even talking about it right now.
So you're going to make a motion to remove
I am
it?
going to make a motion to remove this.
Um,
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a little further discussion.
Not
I want to suggest that in our list of notes of things we're not moving to charter, but suggesting to the commission, that they consider their legislative agenda. They said a critical mass of localities would have
This would be
to,
one that would be like.
the state would have to see a critical mass. So we need to join that list of critical mass in some way other than the charter, if we think that's something we want to see in the future. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
Can I make a motion to remove number 4 based on analysis?
questions, like the explanation.
I think you have to.
I'm a little confused.
Is that 2.04?
and it's based on Florida statute.
Yeah,
Can't
I
be-
was
The
gonna
other
say,
city
so a
has
quick,
to get,
make a motion and secondly discuss it, we can vote it down and then go make another motion, but that's my recommendation.
I don't know if it's a okay.
Well, I made a motion
Oh, okay.
to remove it from the list, and then people said they had questions.
I'll second.
Okay, so when I read this, I thought, well, and again, a question for the city attorney's office. How about we just require any candidate for city commission to collect petitions?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
In addition to the fee that's required by
Yeah,
statute?
yeah. Is there anything that prohibits us from saying city commission, anybody who's running for city commission, in addition to paying the fee or signing the affidavit of undue burden, they also collect petitions?
To what point?
I'm not aware of anything that would preclude that. I mean, that is the question, is what's the ordinance trying to do?
I thought the point was to get rid of
To
the
get
fee
rid of the
in
fee.
favor of a
Well,
petition
there was-
process.
If I remember correctly, and you spoke to this, so correct me if I'm, I'll try to remind you.
Okay.
She wanted to make sure that the people who were running actually had face-to-face contact with their constituency
Yeah,
and forced
I
them
like
to
that.
get signatures was part of what she presented. If that's incorrect, I apologize.
That is correct. I think that that's actually one of the benefits of requiring petitions, that it also functions, because what we see in more often city elections than anything else are people who literally wait until 2 or 3 minutes before the filing deadline, and they go, oh, I think I'll run for city commission, and they run in there and they start filing. And typically, these are not people who are terribly serious candidates, but I think it makes a mockery of city elections, the city election process. I think that if somebody's going to want to run for office, if they want to become a public servant, if they want that job, that it's something they need to be thoughtful about. I think it's something that they need to plan for. And part of that planning process, part of that thoughtfulness process is played out with petition gathering.
But it
Yeah,
doesn't,
I think the research this from perspective of could the city avoid the statutory fee or hardship application with requiring petitions in lieu of. Whether or not we could add on the requirement of petitions, I don't recall seeing anything, but to be honest, that's not what we researched. So we could certainly look into it.
Can we table that then and find out? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything that would conclude that. That's not, that isn't the understanding I think when we research is whether we
Right.
can avoid the hardship
Right.
application.
but I mean, again, if you have a motion and a second, and what's the point if you have to pay it anyway to do a hardship?
Well, it's, in my mind, it's less about the fee itself as it is the respecting the whole election process and making sure that candidates who are going to file the run are doing so in a serious manner.
Trying to discourage frivolous candidates.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Is that going against free speech?
I don't know. That's, well, this is,
No, but I'm saying, you're talking about, you're trying to make all candidates, in essence, have petitions signed. Some candidates might just want to pay the fee. They might not want to go through the process of filling out
this
petitions.
isn't about the fee. In my mind, this isn't about the fee anymore.
Yeah, in your mind, but what I'm saying, candidates have the right, if the system says you pay the fee, no matter if they get there 5 minutes before the time, it's still their right to pay the fee to become a candidate. And that's what I'm just saying. I mean, if that's what the ordinance or the law requires of them to pay that fee at a certain time, whether I like it or you like it or not, it's their right to do it that way.
But my thought on this when we discussed it was in that whole in lieu of paying the election assessment. They're saying that you can't do that.
Right.
So what's the point? I mean, I understand the point,
Yeah.
but I just,
Yeah, I think it's down to a difference of opinion. You support it for Susan's reasons, or you don't support it for the other.
Well, I think
So we
she's
can
trying to
offer.
bifurcate the requirement of making somebody get the signatures in addition to paying the state required fee, which changes what's on here.
Right.
And if she wants to make that motion later, after we vote this one to be removed, then that's entirely up to her. I think she had multiple goals in how she presented it, one of the goals, and that's what I would call it, and that's why I brought it back up. But as the issue has, how it's written here, in the analysis we have from the attorney, I think we should remove it. And if she wants to make a motion to have them research requiring signatures in addition to that, then she'll have to make that.
Question, would somebody who qualifies for the undue burden exemption still have to do petitions
That's
under
not
your
the
idea?
same idea. Yeah. Everybody, if you want to be a candidate, you have to collect them.
Bear in mind, there's a cost associated with petitions. And
Right.
They're a public supervisors. So it is an interesting play.
Oh.
I think it'd be interesting to see if we were to research that point, because the statute does provide for, I think it's just a hardship. It's not even an emergency requirement. So would we then be assigning a fee that the intent of the legislature would be for it to not be a fee?
So let me ask you this then. Is this something, if the city commission wanted to do this by ordinance, could they do it? For all candidates? So not the way it's written here, because obviously state statute prohibits it, but if they just say, well, everybody's going to have to, anybody who wants to run for city commission has to provide X amount of validated petitions, can that be done by ordinance? Okay, so this is,
Going around.
so it sounds like,
let's call it
yeah,
question.
let's call it question. So,
All in favor of removing?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
so may I move the city attorney research these questions and come back to us and let us know if there is a way forward on this, either through the charter or just through our ordinance.
We voted to remove it, and then she's asking you
To research it.
to research this other part. Do you want to restate that?
Okay. The motion is for the city attorney's office to research whether requiring in the charter, requiring anyone who wants to run for city commission, regardless of ability to pay